Listening to the Cargojet Jetstream Pilots Podcast. This episode starts now. All right, everyone, welcome back to episode 2. I'm joined here with the negotiations committee, most of the negotiations committee. As always, my name is Zev. I'm your MEC vice chair, and I'm joined today with
Mike Power. I'm a captain based in Hamilton who commutes out of Halifax.
Anton Osserman, Hamilton FO. I'm a commuter as well. I commute from Croatia.
Hey Zev, it's Sebastian Bielkowski. I'm the chair of the negotiating committee based in Hamilton. Been with Cargojet for well over 23 years now.
Awesome. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. And we have a lot to talk about today. You're fresh off the press, if I'm not mistaken. Today you were in negotiations with the company. You will be in negotiations this week. And so thank you all for being here. I know you're probably tired, but it's great that we're capturing you at this moment. So today's episode is going to cover a main discussion where we talk about some points. We're going to dive into Article 28, which is a big talking point for us. We're going to go over frequently asked questions. So to start us off today, I think a great question to start here is a lot of members are curious what the current climate is in the room with the company and how that's going so far.
Yeah, so that's a question that we do actually get online as well in person. It's pretty intuitive for people to wonder what that's like. But I mean, you know, as climates tend to go, it does shift. Currently, we're dealing with a company. A lot of it's predictable. Sometimes it's hotter, sometimes it's colder. Today, you know, as an example, we came across a couple of stumbling points, but you know, not in any real negative sense. It's to be anticipated that when you're negotiating something as dynamic as an entire contract, there'll be areas that we find points that we agree on easier than others, and nobody's flipping any tables.
All right, yeah, thanks, Sebastian. And Mike, you have anything to add?
Yeah, to Sebastian's point, I think it's going the way it should, the way normal negotiations go. Some days it's more productive than others, but we're a far ways away from where Unifor was. So there's a big shock value in changing up what we had, what language we had in Unifor compared to what ALPA has. So looking at other contracts, you can see how in-depth it is. So the temperature in the room is normally works really well with everyone. And just you get to some points where everyone's they have different ideas on things than what we do, but it works out towards the end anyways.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said as well that with ALPA, we definitely come with a lot more firepower, if you will. We come with a lot of support from ALPA as well. So that's definitely nice to have. Next question I'll ask all of you guys as well is, and you know, a lot of our members want to know about the negotiation structure. So, you know, where are we at in negotiations in terms of what are we negotiating, but also what can we expect kind of going forward? Like, how does a normal negotiations play out?
Yeah, so I can definitely comment on that. Even like going back to the negotiations training seminar, a very standard way that negotiations usually work is you start off with the administration kind of sections. A lot of people don't think they're that important, but as we said throughout the road shows, when something applies to you, such as discipline, recall, layoffs, that kind of stuff, when those things occur, they're the most important sections. And so we start off with those sections and then move on further into operational. That's kind of like scheduling, how the schedules work. And usually the last topic for negotiations would be compensation. And the reason that's usually left to the end is it's fairly quickly negotiated. We want this, they want this, and you negotiate to somewhere where you meet in the middle. And after that, the last item would be term.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anton. Are we looking at that 12-hour rule, or what are we kind of doing in that regard? Because it is tough on some of the members that commute with the 12-hour rule.
Yeah, we realize it's a tough part. I do myself as well. Just trying to get up. Like I live in Halifax, so trying to take a jump seat up to be able to operate that night, I can't do. And so I'm basically have to work an extra day, or well, not work, but I have to leave my home family for an extra day at the beginning of a trip, or not so much at the end of the trip, but generally every pairing, it's an extra day. So we definitely feel that, and we're trying to make it more towards industry standard.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said now, is just moving that towards the industry standard. And we know what other properties are doing. And thanks to Alpo, we have access to that and moving it towards that so it can really ease up because I'm sure there's going to be a lot more commuters that join our company as well. So the next question I have for you folks is the length of the contract. Like, what can we expect in terms of the length of a contract? Yeah, Sebastian, you want to add on to that?
Yeah, for sure. You know, like everything else in this contract, we contemplate the term of the contract, the length of the contract, and so on. And without being able to get into specifics, because we haven't technically covered this yet, this, as Anton said earlier, is something that's generally handled at the end of everything else. So once your administrative, operational, compensation pieces have all been negotiated and essentially TA'd, you then get into things like the term of the contract. One thing I think it's pretty safe to say is that we're coming out of what started out as a 5-year contract. We then voted on a proposal that was brought forward by the company a year into our contract to extend it by 3 years. So essentially, we're in an 8-year contract. And one thing that is abundantly clear, that's put us into a position where, there's such great disparity between where the industry has gotten to in that interim period of time versus where we are locked into essentially 2018 conditions. So it is safe to say that, we're not going to be looking at anything close to an 8-year term.
And to Sebastian's point about that, it's not that short contracts are better or long-term ones are better. It's just that we just want to position ourselves to the bargaining cycle of other airlines, so we're not going to be in a position where we're lacking behind everyone else like we are right now.
And my kind of final point here in the main discussion is, people will have a lot of questions. People do have a lot of questions, and sometimes people feel like their questions aren't fully answered, and that's tough, right? And I guess the thing I want to prelude to is how much can we share, right? How much are we able to share from contract negotiations, and if so, why and how per se?
Yeah. So, as we move through this process, we're also evolving with it, along with it. It is an organic sort of a creature. So, the communication part of that is, we try to include and bring the membership along with us through, mechanisms like we run some surveys. We did something which was quite non-normative by holding a cross-country road show mid-negotiations. Typically, these things happen at the end of a contract once everything is TA'd. But we thought that, because we weren't negotiating in that period, that perhaps we would capitalize on that opportunity to go across the country, communicate face to face with our members, and field the questions and so on. As far as how much we can share, that's something that it's treading a fine line between trying to furnish the membership with as much meaningful information as possible while not jeopardizing our negotiation strategy with the company.
Yeah, and it also you can look at other contracts, other ALPA contracts, and we're trying to move towards industry standard. So that's what we're looking at. All the airlines across Canada, and we're trying to make ourselves in line with them. So it'd be very similar to other ALPA properties. So if we can't share the information exactly of what we have, but if you look at other companies, it's similar to those.
That's a great point, Mike. If people do have a lot of questions about things we want or want to look for, looking at other ALPA contracts, I think, is a great point for people to go to.
Yeah, very much along those lines, and sort of addressing the question about communicating with the membership, trying to keep them up to speed, and so on. Of course, like the conventional methods of sending comms out at timely intervals when developments sort of happen. Another thing that we've recently done is to really spool up our P2P committee, so that when people are on the line, they're interfacing with those members who have stepped up into those roles, that they liaise directly with us. So they'll be given the information from the negotiating committee that we want to sort of get percolating throughout the flight crew as a whole.
And something I really want to add as well, to your point, Sebastian, is as vice chair, I do technically run the committees, and the P2P committee is extremely vocal. They are telling us a lot of feedback of what's happening on the line when they talk to guys, and we do relay that information back. So they are vocal. They are, one of our biggest committees, if I'm not mistaken, and they're doing their job.
In regard to the information that is allowed to be shared, obviously the membership is curious to know where the developments are being made, and One of the most important things to clarify is all of this will be available to the membership once it becomes. Once we've TA'd the entire contract, that will be released to the membership. There will be an executive summary. They'll be able to access the whole document, and so nothing will be obscured from the membership.
Yeah, not to mention, sort of what Anton's saying. Once everything is TA'd, of course, one of the first sort of insightful documents that will be released is the executive summary, which just basically summarizes everything that appears in the new tentative collective agreement. Following that period, there's there will be another roadshow essentially where we will travel across the country in more detail, disseminating the information on more of a page-to-page basis, and then engaging in a question and answer period with the flight crew members, so that even if there's something that's sort of left, that causes some residual questioning, so I'm not necessarily understood, they can ask us the questions face to face. Again, in that sort of forum, I find is probably one of the more effective ways of getting information out.
Point out that we are also governed by certain rules. We're to the bargaining of faith, which was also brought out in our protocol agreement, but also the integrity of the process. So, which would include confidentiality.
Yeah, nothing's finalized until we have a finalized agreement, right? So, and I just want to highlight as well, take the time here that we do have this negotiations portal that we're starting up on the website that will have all the, tentative agreements, and with the yellow, red, and green, where you can see the status of everything, and clips from the podcast, clips from the roadshow, and lots of updates there. So it's going to be a really great way for our members to stay involved. Okay, now pivoting. Thank you guys for that. It was fantastic. And Article 28, that is a big sticking point for us in our group. It's a big topic of conversation, so we want to address it head on. Very thrilled that we're able to do that. Joining us as well is Adam Brochu. He's our ex officio member as well for the negotiations committee. Thank you, Adam, for being here.
Yeah, no problem.
So first thing I'll kind of ask is just give an overview of Article 28. A lot of our new guys, a lot of the guys that haven't maybe reviewed the contract over, aren't really sure what that is, and they've heard that come up a lot. Article 28, Article 28. Well, what exactly is Article 28?
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up, Sev, because it has been a bit of a hot button topic for the pilots here. I think really up until recently, when we cracked this contract open and started looking at negotiating early, that was sort of the first exposure that many of our members actually had to its existence in the first place. So to give a bit of a background of Article 28, we as a pilot group first unionized in 2012, and that was under Unifor. This article initially appeared in that very inaugural contract. Essentially, it was put in place by the company. Its main purpose at that point was to assure our customers at that time that there would be labor security or stability throughout the term of that initial contract. And it's important to note as well that as a provision of that first collective agreement, that Article 28 was a negotiated term between Unifor and the company.
And I just want to just take a moment to discuss what Article 28 actually does. It's not simply a no strike, no lockout. It's actually a new dispute resolution process for the end of bargaining in the collective agreement. So normally what would happen is when parties reach an impasse, is you would first go to conciliation. If conciliation fails, the parties can, or the pilot group is then allowed to be in a 21-day cooling off period. Following that, there's the right to strike. What this Article 28 does is directs us to, after conciliation, go to mediation, and if mediation fails, from there we'll go to binding arbitration.
Yeah, and another thing to add to that is with our protocol agreement, we had already selected an arbitrator that, if it came to that, an arbitrator that has been involved with our company. Our company and the association, and so with Bill Kaplan being that arbitrator, if it got to that, he's already seen how the relationship functions, and he understands where we come from, where the company comes from. And that's just another important thing to add to what Article 28 entails.
Yeah, it's a really good point that Anton brought up about that aspect of our protocol agreement having William Kaplan sort of written into that process. But notably as well, not only would he eventually, if needed, arbitrate, but he would also be the mediator assigned to us if we did arrive at an impasse with the company on something critical.
All right. So the next thing I have for you guys, and that's great. I think it's really good background. I think a lot of folks maybe weren't too aware of all that. The next thing is, now that we know what Article 28 is, okay, so looking forward, how is Article 28 being positioned strategically in negotiations? What does that kind of look like for us?
All right, thanks. And I just want to add to what Sebastian was saying about labor stability and how we got here with Article 28. And we understand that our pilot group really is central to the value that Article 28 brings to the company. That guarantee of labor stability is part and parcel to the value that the pilots bring to the company.
And just to add to what Adam had mentioned there, with that in mind, we understand that Article 28 also represents growth and financial certainty for the company. The monetary value of that clause is not lost on us, that's for certain. And it's something we are definitely keeping on mind as we negotiate.
That's great to hear, guys. Thank you so much for that insight. So moving on to our frequently asked questions section, where we want to hear directly from the members. And just a reminder, you can suggest or submit your questions to cjtpodcast@alpa.org. You can message any one of the negotiations or MEC via text or email, as well as the P2P committee, to submit your frequently asked questions. So the first question I have here that was submitted is, are we exploring a credit system? If so, why or why not?
Okay, so look, this process basically mandates us to explore everything, including the conditions of our work, how we bid for flying, and so on. So to say, are we considering credit hour system? We have looked at it. Historically, the company over the period of the last couple of decades has looked at it a number of times. There are challenges inherent within that. The reason why we are currently on a calendar day system is because based on the type of flying that we do, the volume of flying, the fleet utilization, and so on, it really proves to be quite ineffective to transition into a conventional credit hour system. So to give you a short answer, we've been looking at it. It's not likely that we will transition at this point, and there are a few other reasons to that as well.
I think it's important to know as well that we have built models and everything, and we have it hasn't been just a simple, are we going to do it, yes or no? There has been models built with gates, different simulations on how that would look like for us.
100%. And we have had members actually forward us extensive work and some of these models that you're speaking to currently. I think one of the biggest sort of considerations on a preventative sort of stance for us as well is as we move into a new contract, we'd also like to think that, we've learned from mistakes. We've learned, some of the shortfalls of a previous contract, not just this last one, but the initial one as well. And so we do understand inherently the credit calendar day system rather, and how it really applies with the company, some of the areas that we need to focus on in terms of not having those loopholes exploited and so on. Moving to a credit hour system at this point opens up a whole new can of worms in terms of we've never had one here. But inherently with any new system, it's like a beta of a new product. There will be issues with it, things that weren't potentially contemplated when a new system is implemented.
And just to continue with what Sebastian was talking about, we consulted this with ALPA staff, subject matter experts, and looking at the survey results as well, it's not all too much indicated with the results that we received. And looking at the priorities of the pilots, our main objective is getting the money back into our pockets. After 8 years of a stale contract, that's our main priority. And this would definitely be a complex issue. And the administrative costs that would definitely subtract from our total compensation is something that we are definitely putting into consideration.
And one important thing to remember is that this is our first ALPA contract, so we're building a framework for the future for any other future members who want to get involved with the next contracts or future contracts. So this is something that could possibly be implemented in the future, but right now we're basically building the biggest framework that we've ever had here in order to try and touch on every issue that we have.
Yeah, that's a great point. And to kind of work off what Mike was saying is building that framework. And a question that we've had a few times, and especially myself personally, I've been asked is, so how is the negotiation committee working with other committees, right? So when it comes to contract feedback and inclusion, we do have a lot of other committees in Cargojet, and ALPA has told us that we are a very high participating group. We have quite a lot of volunteers in a lot of committees. So how are we including them, and how are we using them for the contract going forward?
Yeah, so I'd like to comment on this because I think from the very beginning, the committees have been an essential and integral part in developing these sections. Uh, if we remember back in August at the chairs meeting, we had all of the chairs present their priorities, what they'd like to see. And as we ramped up into the negotiations, a lot of that was noted.
All right, Anton. Yeah, that's great. And I do remember that in August when I was membership chair, I did present on what I'd like to see with membership going forward, and so did all the other chairs, and that was really great to see. Sebastian, yeah.
Yeah, and so starting off with that as a jumping off point before we engaged officially in negotiations, that was a great way to kind of get the ball rolling in terms of involving all of these committees in the process, and moving forward from there. As we develop these sections, which eventually end up being passes that we put across the table to the company, we continue that with the individual committees. For example, the Central Air Safety Committee, the CASC, the Scheduling Committee, when we get into the scheduling section sort of in more depth and so on. All of these committees play an integral role in developing these sections that we will then eventually formulate into sections of this new collective agreement.
And just recently we sent the accident investigation to the CASC and the jump seating and commuting to the jump seat committee as well.
Yeah, lots of insight there, and I'm really glad we're involving everyone. The last question I have for the facts for today is a lot of people want to know how the collective bargaining agreement that we're putting together is positioned to handle future fleet changes. Obviously, Cargojet's always looking to grow, and how are we positioning ourselves for that?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Zev. I think that, this is probably front of mind to a lot of people as well, because of course a collective agreement is not just to address any inadequacies that exist currently or any perceived shortcomings. We're looking at this for the next number of years, whatever that happens to be at the end of the contract. So, this sort of a consideration is essentially addressed through two primary sections, one being scope and one being new equipment, both sections that will appear in this new contract and that are currently under development.
I know you guys are all quite tired. You still have another day of negotiations ahead of you, and thank you so much for doing this today for us. Thank you all for being here today.
Thanks, Zev, for having us.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thanks.
All right, that's it for today. We hope you enjoyed this episode and found it informative and genuinely useful. For past episodes, you can visit cjt.alpa.org, visit our bargaining portal, or go to cjtjetstreampodcast.podbean.com. And as always, if you have questions or topics you want us to cover, please email cjtpodcast@alpa.org. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.